So what is centering? So centering is one of the main parts of the Embodied Facilitator course that I help lead. It's also the main part of many of my courses and extremely useful to a lot of clients. There are many centering techniques out there, but let's take a slightly broader, deeper look at it before we go into the techniques. First thing to say, it's a bit of a bucket category. So it could refer to any form of state management whatsoever. More specifically, it could refer to a reduction of the fight, flight, freeze, fold response. Slightly broader, you could say it's that plus also working with grasping, so that I want that nice thing as well as I don't want that nasty thing. Learning to regulate that, which we could call equanimity from a Buddhist practice, usually through the body from an embodiment context. So embodied equanimity practices would be the more general term. So we've got very broadly state shifting, working with fight, flight, freeze and or grasping, and very specifically some people refer simply to referring to the center point of the body, which in traditional Asian arts is Dantian, or the center, Tanden, just below the belly button in the middle of your body. So that is more specific when some people talk about centering. Usually on the course, we're referring to it as this reduction in the fight, flight, freeze, or grasping response. Anything that does that could be called centering. Usually it's in stillness. However, you'll also come across centering movements, like these kind of hip movements or things you'll see from Aikido. In fact, my Aikido teacher says all of Aikido is centering, the whole movement of all of it. In that movement can help bring us into our center of gravity. Yeah. All right, so there's the basic theory. Do look at the centering book that I've written. That's, if you're on EFC, that's provided to you. The centering book will go into much more detail about this. It also goes through a set of different categories of centering. So we could have like hypo and hyper centering. So either to reduce or increase the arousal level. Normally, when people say centering, they mean reduce the arousal level. Because if we're, in that fight, flight response, our heart's beating, we're up in our chest maybe with the breathing, it's the relaxing and coming down. However, not always. Sometimes a freeze response, we actually need a bit of movement, yeah? Or if someone goes down in their fight, in that stubborn kind of response, they might need a bit more up and a bit more lightness. Therefore, we should be a little bit careful with terms like grounding, because not everyone might need that. They might need skying, if I'm going to make up a word. Individually, we can look at specific centering versus general. So something like ABC technique, it's a classic technique that I use. That's kind of a general one-size-fits-all kind of centering. However, we could get very specific. We say, what is your fight-flight response? Now, while this is cross-cultural, I've done this work in many, many countries, there are some specific individual differences and some variations. So getting very specific about what's happening in someone's response so they can then undo that, replace it with something more useful. That comes to the purpose of centering. So what is the purpose of centering? Well, there's I, we, and it. I, you'll feel better. We, your relationship is more possible. This is often missed. And it, you're more functional. So we can be specific in the centering and look at the exact things people do. Paul Linden, I think, is probably the best person in the world for centering in terms of the rigor and the kind of logic he's bringing to it. He'll get people to identify specifically what they're doing. So we'll do tissue throwing, for example. We'll deliberately trigger the distress response, and the grasping response is something I've added to it, actually. And actually trigger that so people can get very specific about learning what they're doing so they can undo it or replace it with something more useful. So there's three things there that are useful: the I, the we, and the it of centering. This is why centering, or what's the point. I, you can feel better. We, this is the one that's often ignored, the relationship can be better. And it, the functionality is improved. So Paul Linden will often do like a lot of tests about, you can now count a bit more, or you can fight better, or hit harder, or, from a whole range of things, the thing that's improved. There's this crazy claim actually that centering improves anything. I'd say that's almost true, yeah? So this testable way of looking at centering, this before and after way of looking at centering, that's very EFC. It's very logical. It's also great for working in business where you can say, look, you did do this with your body, didn't you? You tell me. And then what are you doing now? What's changed? What's different? That before and after, I'd say, is critical. This can lead to working with what we call a principle, or Paul Linden, I think more accurately, calls an algorithm. And this is where we trigger a distress response or a grasping response, notice the response, have someone learn that for themselves. That's important, you don't just tell them. And then you give some kind of centering technique, and then they can actually see a different response. And it's empowering to do that. And they can learn, go, wow, that actually makes a difference. This centering principle or algorithm is a fundamentally different and broader way of looking at centering than specific techniques. So some teachers will teach, ABC like I teach, or Brief Ground Center, or Wendy Palmer has hers, and they'll say, this is how you do centering. I'd say, A, what does the person need? Let's identify that. And B, there might be different techniques that work better for different people. Visualization, for example, works great for some, but not for others. So looking at centering more broadly as a principle, as a way to work with state regulation, I think is critical. We could also look at the categories of centering. So I mentioned hypo or hyper. This is bringing the state up and down. These are usually both done with physical centering. Physical centering might just be things like bend your knees slightly, breathe with your belly. There are other kinds of centering, however. So there's centering in meaning, or centering in inquiry. I'd probably put these two as one category. Strozzi was the big one I've seen use centering in meaning, like for the sake of what, he'll say. He'll talk about centering fairly generally as a way of getting orientated around your values. And this has a definite physical effect, actually, and an emotional effect. So very powerful. Wendy Palmer was the first I've seen to use an inquiry method. So rather than be like, right, I'm going to bend my knees or relax my belly, she'll say, what would a little bit more, she says a little bit because that's doable, what would a little bit more ease be like, or confidence? She'll pick a quality. And actually holding it as an inquiry, it's more, we could say, feminine method than some. That, I think, really works well for some people, for sure, the inquiry method. Third kind of centering I've developed is social centering. So this is the idea that it's actually our relational system we want to engage. So yes, we can work physically just on our own. It's very American, very individual. However, we're relational creatures. So by looking at the friendly camera person, or imagining my niece, for example, Paul Linden will say, think of someone who makes your heart smile. He was the first one I heard use that. I think Wendy Palmer adopted it later. But anyway, so thinking of, or actually in the moment, looking for friendliness, connection, what you have in common with people, this social sense of people. I might, be teaching and I just look for that one friendly person who's looking at me encouragingly in the audience of otherwise unfriendly people. That engages this social engagement system, which is not compatible with the fight-flight system and can be very relaxing. It's like if a baby's crying, we don't come up to it and teach it a yoga breathing exercise, do we? We hold the baby and talk to the baby reassuringly and, cuddle the baby. We engage that social engagement system. So three main kinds of centering there. Both can be hypo or hyper. All are mindfulness based, but sometimes people say, what's the difference between mindfulness and centering? I'd say that centering changes something. So I'm not just being aware of my body, I might then relax my belly or change my posture, working with the 8 or 9 tools that we work with specifically to make that language of centering operational rather than metaphorical. Okay, so they're the main things I would say about centering. That's a very quick and broad overview. There's a load more videos you can find on the body of leadership and the body of coaching and on the YouTube. And this, obviously you need to learn the specific techniques. Like there's a video on the ABC technique, and there's other perfectly good techniques out there. You need 1 or 2 good centering techniques. So centering is profound. There are senior embodiment teachers that teach nothing but centering, actually, almost nothing but. So I would say this is one of the major pieces. Working with clients, I've definitely seen this really change lives. If you want to give when I'm doing a stress workshop or a leadership workshop, particularly if it's short and I just want to leave something with people, something really practical with people, so centering I've given them. When I've taught coaches, again, I remember when I was working with Newfield, a coach training organization, I was brought in as a guest trainer. I didn't have a lot of time. I just taught the coaches centering, and they said, wow, this has profoundly impacted their coaching. People saying things like, I'm now doing 2 sessions, what used to take me 6. That's great. Yep. So centering, don't underestimate it. A powerful tool. If you're on EFC, I'd say I'd love to spend more time on it. It's actually, it's just because of time constraints, we don't do even more of it. I think it's super powerful. So use it, test it. Don't believe me as ever. Put it in your life, make it useful.